for many of us is engaging with the public as they're out having fun, enjoying the natural resources. Next to that is honesty and integrity. A large part of what we're going to do and what you do as a conservation warden day to day, you need to be honest and fair with people. You need to have integrity. You need to be able to be self-motivated. Much of what we do, you're out by yourself, you're in the sticks, you're way away from anybody else. And doing the right thing, regardless of who's looking, is a tremendous core competency of what we do. You have to wake up every day, have the self-confidence, have the motivation to get after it, to protect the natural resources and the people that enjoy them. Speaking to that self-directed work, you will, of course, have supervisors. Many of us work independently without close supervision on most days. And we're entrusted by our supervisors, first line supervisors, to do the right work and to gear that work towards what the station requires. Of course, what I have going on here in Iowa County largely differs from what's going on right now in Door County on the Great Lakes. All throughout the state, you're kind of beholden to the station that you're in, and you can kind of gear your day based on what your station needs are. And in most cases, you're given the flexibility by your first line supervisor to do that. Next to that is negotiation and listening skills. First off, to be a leader, to be a warden, you first must be a good follower. You must need to listen to people, understand where they're coming from, and solve what's largely some complex problems and come to a positive resolution through communication skills and negotiation skills. This has been, a core competency of the warden service for years and years, is our ability to listen, talk, and negotiate with people. You'd be surprised, you do it every single day, just in conversation with people to de-escalate situations, and come to a resolution. In large part, what we do is a law enforcement profession. If you're risk averse, it may not be the right profession for you. There is some risk, there is some enforcement with our job, and then naturally negotiation and problem solving goes right along with that. And the last bullet point we have here is, an eagerness to learn. As wardens, you need to know a little bit about a whole lot of things. If I could sum up the job, that statement right there would be just about right. You have to be able to learn and continue to learn and grow based on your background that you come from. And this willingness to learn, certainly like Major Campy had mentioned before, regardless of what background you have, whether you come from a traditional police background and you would be coming to the warden service with years of service as a police officer or similar position, while not required, there's still a significant learning curve when becoming a warden. That's important to keep a positive attitude and continue that learning environment. I think that we all look to achieve and certainly keep us engaged in our career as we go on. So, speaking to a lot of the life and work experience, as Major Campy had mentioned before, the job description mentions a lot of, what we expect of wardens in the field. So if you don't meet a lot of these bullet points, you don't necessarily have to. However, this is just kind of gearing you towards a lot of the experience in work and life experience that would certainly benefit you as you go forward. A large part of what we do is education. Talking with people out there who are, fishing, hunting, kayaking, is really important to have that fundamental basis of the natural resource laws that we regulate. In many cases, that comes in the form of education. In other phases, it can be enforcement or investigations. The next component, kind of dovetailing off of that is, having a strong background in natural resources. Of course, this is kind of a very vague description because natural resources take so many shapes. You could have a hunting and fishing or traditional trapping background, while not required. You may come from a non-consumptive, you are a park user, you like going kayaking, boating, ATVing. I mean, this is all natural resource experience. Or you come with a biology degree and have a really great fundamental basis for the natural resources as a whole. Extremely valuable when it comes to the warden service, regardless of what background you come from. As long as you have a fundamental base of, understanding the natural resources and have a, propensity to want to gain and learn, that's, a tremendous base to which to start from. Sharing the passion and profession with others. So, of course, what I do day to day is extremely rewarding for me. And the more and more I get older, the more I wish to, teach others about the same, natural resources and wildlife and fisheries that got me excited and into this job in the first place. So, sharing that experience, and certainly I stand before you today to speak of the same experiences is really important. And for many of you listening, I'm sure, you have tremendous stories and memories of you or your family out hunting, fishing, walking, dog walking in a park, boating that you can draw from and speak to those experiences. Next, we have customer service. We certainly serve the residents of Wisconsin, and customer service is a tremendous priority for us. We hold the warden service to an incredibly high standard to speak with our public and navigate difficult situations that may occur while interacting. So customer service is a fundamental basis of what we do as well, and certainly front of mind when you talk about life or work experience. Engaging with diverse groups of people is our next slide here, that are a bullet point. Like I said earlier, we have a tremendous user base. We all use resources within the state of Wisconsin. So largely the residents that we regulate is just about everybody. At some point you will have an interaction, whether it's clean drinking water, air, just, enjoying one of our state properties. And in large part, we get to talk with a tremendously diverse group of folks. One of the great parts of the job is speaking with other people and how they utilize the resource, and how I can better serve their needs, along with keeping the resource safe and the public trust together at large. So very, very important part of that. Conflict management, working independently. So much of what I do, I'd say, in large part, 90% of what I do, I'm working by myself. Working through problems by yourself is incredibly important. I work in a very rural community, and there's problems you may be 20, 30 minutes away from anybody else to help you out. So, having a great basis of problem solving skills and conflict management is a tremendously important, as well as collaborating with the team. Sometimes there are some issues that just require more people to tackle them. And your willingness to not only lead, but to follow as well amongst a larger team can be important. And I think just about anybody can kind of nod along or think of an example where they, meet some of these, life or work experience that they could bring to the warden service, certainly. Meeting deadlines and taking initiative. Again, speaking to the, independent lifestyle that we work, you have to take the initiative. Much of what we do is proactive rather than reactive, like much of law enforcement. They're going from call to call to call. Most days, you will have calls that you must answer. The phone does ring. You will get calls. However, much of the warden service, you get to kind of take the station in your own hands and go out and look for, problems or opportunities that pop up. So taking the initiative, working with the community to understand what's important to the community, how you can help the community and ultimately our customers at large, and certainly meeting deadlines. Again, having that self-motivation, you need to meet deadlines while having this flexibility. Sometimes it can you can lose sight of a lot of the deadlines and important things that you still need to do. So like with any job, meeting deadlines is extremely important. Experience teaching, tutoring, guiding, mentoring. Certainly, whatever background you come from, I'm sure at some point you had to teach somebody about the profession, vocation, or whatever career you happen to be in currently. And being open to that. Our training process, as Kara laid out, is very long. And you will find yourself at some point in your career, like I have, mentoring a new warden, speaking with a member of the public, maybe introducing a child to fishing for the first time, getting them outside, enjoying our state parks or wildlife areas. That mentoring, coaching, aspect of our job is incredibly important and rather rewarding in much of what we do. Lastly, the volunteer experience. It doesn't have to necessarily come from an NGO or non-government organization where they're geared towards hunting and fishing. We're looking for the person who wants to do better by others and takes the time, initiative, engaging with volunteer organizations, certainly the community organizations, because in large part as wardens, we're all kind of stationed around the state, and we're well ingrained within the communities. So a large part of my success is geared towards the relationships I build with the community and the volunteers that I interact with. So, if you have a background working with different civics groups or service organizations, can be tremendously important and transition you quite well and position you quite well for the warden service.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to reiterate for you all that when we look for somebody to be a conservation warden, we are not necessarily looking for somebody who already does the job, already enforces natural resources laws. We're looking for somebody who has the ability to do that in the long run. There's a reason we have a year-long training program, and that's because we're taking the person that you are and we're training you to be the warden that you can be. And so when you are reviewing or reflecting on, your personal life experiences, think about how those fit in to some of the things we're looking for and the minimum and preferred qualifications in your letter of qualifications or cover letter, and be sure to address those, because I do understand how sometimes it may seem like what I currently do, I'm a mechanic. I'm not prepared to be a conservation warden, or how do these things fit into my life? And almost every career sets you up with some of these skill sets that are very important in a conservation warden career. Customer service can come from the service industry or retail, problem solving. I mean, that's what you do when you're trying to fix things, right? And so no matter what, whether it's a small example or a big example, try to reflect on some of the things that you've done throughout your either work, personal, or just general life experiences, and let us know how those meet our minimum and preferred qualifications in your letter of qualifications. So once you take the time to reflect on all of that and submit your application, as I mentioned, we review it. It takes a little bit to review it, but eventually you're given a score. We select the top percentage, generally about, I would say 40% of applicants move on to the next phase of the process, which is our pre-interview screen. There are 3 different interviews throughout our hiring process. There's the pre-interview screen, which we also call a one-way interview, the panel interview, and then the post-background interview. And they all are put in the process for a reason and serve a little bit of a different purpose. So with our pre-interview screen, as I mentioned, it's also called a one-way interview. It's a way for us to assess the applicants who have passed the initial screening, and then get another look at them before we make another cut and bring the number down to do a panel interview. So the pre-interview screens or one-way interviews are virtual. You do them at your own time. There is no coordinating them. We provide you the prompt, you record your answers, and we score them after the fact. So you are provided the prompts. You have a lot of time to reflect on your responses and once again, prepare and record your responses. For the panel interview, we'll once again get into that a little bit later, but that is just like you would sort of think, which is an in-person formal interview. And we'll also touch on the post-background interview. That is, though, a little bit more informal. It's just a one-on-one interview. There's no questions provided ahead of time, a little bit more casual ability or a time for you to get your questions about the position answered as well. So let's talk a little bit about preparing for interviews. So all of the interviews in this process come with a little maybe anticipation. People tend to get a little nervous when it comes to interviews. And so we really encourage you to prepare for your interviews ahead of time. I am someone who thankfully throughout my high school and college career had participated in some volunteer or group experiences and got a lot of experience interviewing. So I felt really prepared, but still nervous for when I eventually had to interview for this position. And so the more you prepare, the better off I really think you can be. And preparing for an interview isn't really rocket science. You can probably Google the top most asked interview questions, and that'll give you a good foundation for maybe some of the things to expect during an interview. Really what it comes down to when preparing for an interview is managing your time, providing the having good communication, and then answering the question completely. So make sure you practice out loud, whether you're talking to yourself in the mirror or you talk to somebody else. The other thing that you should work on is telling a complete story that meets the question. So in the state of Wisconsin, and maybe it's just the DNR or our division, we really like to ask compound questions. And we want to know not just about would you do this, but have you ever, and tell us a time when. And so when you're answering those questions, be sure that you answer every part of the question. In all of the state of Wisconsin, job applications or hiring processes and interviews, they're all rated based on a set of benchmarks. And so if you want to achieve the best possible score in those interview processes, you need to ensure that you answer the question completely, because failure to answer part of a question means you could potentially leaving some points off the table when it comes to getting your score. So be sure to really look at the question, separate all the different parts of the compound question up, and make sure you answer each and every part of that question. You can also set yourself up for success by using the STAR technique, it's called. And STAR stands for situation, task, action, result, and reflect, which is really just a good way to remember. If I'm going to tell you a story about a time when I've done something, I need to describe the situation, explain what my task was in that situation, what were the actions that I specifically took or we took as a group, and then what was the result of that action, and after reflecting on it, what did I learn from that reflection? And so if you can cover those 5 things, that's a good way to ensure you're telling a complete story that really focuses on the work that you did and probably some of the details that often interview panelists are looking to hear. Also, when you're interviewing, be aware of your nonverbal communication. This is especially important in our one-way interviews and our panel interviews where, although they're verbal, they're also seeing your body language and everything else. A lot of our communication is not just what we hear, but also what we see. And so practice your communication in an actual formal setting. Ask a friend, a partner, a coworker to sit down and conduct a mock interview with you. I bet if you were to try it, you'd find that even a mock interview gives you a few butterflies, and that's good. That's you practicing and really just gaining that confidence in answering those questions, looking somebody in the eyes while you're providing an answer, and providing great professional communication. Also, in your interview, don't forget to ask questions if you have them. The time that you're allotted for the interview is your time to use. So if you find at the end of the interview, you have a little bit of time left on the table, feel free to go back and clarify anything earlier on. Maybe you remembered something you wanted to include, or maybe throughout the interview, you didn't get a chance to tell us something about your education or your experiences or your interest in the position. That interview time is yours to use. So you can include some of that information at the end of the interview if you still have time. You also have time there to ask questions, get clarification about the process or about the panel members and why they enjoy working there or what the position will be like. And all those things, I think, show a great reflection that you're really interested in the position. And if possible, try to have confidence. I know it's difficult when you're nervous and anxious, but best advice I can give is to smile, have fun, and that will come across almost always as confidence. So do your best in those interviews. After the one-way interview, like I mentioned, you will move on to the panel interview, which is an in-person interview that is generally hosted in the Madison area. And part of the in-person interview is a physical fitness test or a physical readiness test, or PRT. The PRT is a battery of tests that you can see here on the screen, and it is regulated by our Department of Justice. So the Department of Justice oversees all the law enforcement standards, and they require that everybody entering the academy or becoming a new law enforcement officer needs to pass these minimum standards, which are here on the screen. There is a lot of information on our website about this, and also links to go to the Department of Justice website to learn more and watch a video about how these tests are conducted, or read the manual about the specifics of the test. But what I need to say about the test is I would really encourage you to start practicing now. Often, this is another area where we see people fail to prepare, and then on the day of the test or a week before their interview, they decide to go through the PRT, the practice test, and realize they can't, make the sit-ups, or they can't make the vertical jump. And when you're only practicing a week in advance, it's a little too late to go in and really make some adjustments. So if you're serious about the conservation warden career, you're really interested in pursuing this as a career, in addition to preparing your cover letter and resume, I suggest you start practicing this physical readiness test now, whether it's outside or with a buddy. And if you're interested, go onto the website, learn how to do the sit-ups and push-ups properly, so that way you're not doing them incorrectly. The PRT physical readiness test is a required part of our hiring process, and you must pass it. You have to meet all of these requirements and before you move on to our background investigation. So our background investigation, Mike?
Yeah, so we really have three pillars to the background investigation. The first of that being a submission of background questionnaire. So this can be a rather long document where you as the applicant will put down certainly your previous work history, who you've worked for, your educational background of, what school you had gone to, who your advisor was, maybe some professors. You're leaving your references certainly within the background questionnaire as well. As well as, different residences that you've lived at. Naturally, we've all lived in many different places. So this is really where we get a snapshot look of what you've done your entire life. The reason why a lot of this information is important is we're looking to garner, how you are as a person, not necessarily what you did, but how you are. Naturally, you have interactions with a lot of people, and the background questionnaire really hits at, all those interactions you happen to have, whether it was a landlord, a educational background, or work background in history. So The background questionnaire is quite lengthy. It takes several hours to complete. However, again, what we're looking to garner from that is how you are as a person, and not necessarily where you came from or anything like that. After you've completed the background questionnaire, it'll go to a background investigator. I am a background investigator within the department, and can certainly speak to, having to follow up with, different employers' references, social references, professional references. It gets to be a rather long process, but a rather important process for us. And throughout an investigation, I may call 20, 30, 40 people. Certainly in most cases, I would come to your house, come to your residence, interview you, just basically have a conversation with you and get a feel for who you are. It's not a grilling. It's by no means meant to be intimidating. As a background investigator, quite frankly, we just want to get to know you and see where you're coming from, see how honest you are, and really get down to who you are as a person. So likely you would sit down with a background investigator wherever you are. If you're out of state, likely we'll send somebody out of state. If you're in state, generally we're pretty region specific. A background investigator will be assigned that's in your area if we can, if it makes business sense to do that. So you'll be reviewed by a background investigator. This can take a significant amount of time. When Major Kampke was laying out the timeline that we have to deal with, generally it's over a month to allow us to do a really complete background investigation and garner those important truths about you and where you come from. Lastly here, honesty is critical. There's a reason that's underlined. No one's perfect. We are all 18 once. If you've made a mistake, at any point in your background, there's nothing better you can do rather than just roll over and be honest as to, what, that was a really poor decision. This is what I did, reflecting on it as an adult currently, as I sit here before you today, that was not the decision to make. And you will have those hard conversations with your background investigator, but quite frankly, we can't have dishonest people become wardens. You won't get anywhere if you're gonna, come with lies or try to misrepresent yourself. The best thing you can do is be perfectly honest with your background investigator. All of us have, like I said, have done stuff in our past, and quite frankly, if you can turn a new leaf, quit looking in the rearview mirror, and have your focus set on the windshield in front of you, and make good choices from there on out, that's the best situation you can bring yourself into. I really can't emphasize the honesty component of the background. Don't screw that up, and be perfectly honest with your background investigator. So once that's complete, we will create a report. As a background investigator, that report gets submitted to the selection committee or selection background panel, in which they will rate the backgrounds and make the appropriate decisions from there based on your honesty and the truths that come out within that background.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So our background investigations is a part of the process where I think people also, once again, feel a little intimidated by. They can be lengthy. We do ask a lot of questions, but the background investigation is really just a way for us to get to know who you are, and get to look at all of your history and who you are, what people think about how you behave and how you act, and to see if you meet some of those core competencies that we're looking for. It's really hard to interview, somebody and see if they're honest. That's generally when we find out how honest somebody is, generally during a background investigation. So the background investigation is a crucial part of our process. And just as much as it is a tool for us to learn about you, it's a tool for you to learn about us as well. So that meeting that Warden Burns was talking about, between you and the investigator, is a really great way for you to ask questions, really get one-on-one time with the conservation warden, ask what the job is going to be like, and really get all the questions you have answered, training, time away, whatever it may be. Just know that if you have a unique family circumstance, odds are we've probably had somebody with similar circumstances. And there are some things that, you just have to know and then make a decision on whether or not this will work for you and your family situation. So it's a great time to get some of those questions answered. Like Mike said, after the investigations conclude, we have a review panel review them. The top applicants from that background review panel will be invited to a one-on-one interview with myself. That interview is really meant to, once again, provide time for you to ask questions about the agency and the position, and as me, as one of the hiring managers, get to know you a little bit better. So although I coordinate the entire hiring process, I don't sit on any of the review panels, assessment panels until this point in the process. So it's really important for me to get to know you and you to get to know the department when we reach this stage in the process. This is also about the time when you are provided information about our current vacant stations and allowed to indicate your preferences on which of those stations you would like to see. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get that station, but we take some of that information into account when we decide on offers and station placement. So the conditional offer is sort of the first offer that comes out, and those come out this year in November, very early November. And in that conditional offer is the future station that you will hold. Historically, I know one of the biggest complaints we received is not knowing where eventually somebody would be stationed until after the training and training process. But we corrected that, and now you'll know that right up front at the time of a conditional offer. If you receive an offer and that station location doesn't work for you, you have the opportunity to decline the offer, and we'll provide an offer to another candidate. Part of the conditional offers, this is not the time to, put in your 2 weeks notice at another employer, because there are still conditions that you need to meet, which is why it's called a conditional offer. Those conditions include medical and psychological testing, and just verifying that you have all the safety certifications we require, and a handful of other smaller items that we need to verify. Once all the conditions are met, that is when then you would receive an appointment letter, and those appointment letters and formal offers will come out in December. After you receive your appointment letter, you'll then start training. And what training regiment you go into will depend on whether or not you have current law enforcement certifications. So, like I mentioned earlier, if you currently need a law enforcement certification through the Department of Justice, you would start in January, and we will run our department 720-hour Department of Justice sponsored law enforcement academy. It's in-house. You train with us up in Sparta, and we'll go into what that looks like in just a little bit as well. If you already have your law enforcement certifications, you will start in April and attend an abbreviated academy, which is only 6 weeks total in length, and it'll cover just a refresher on policies and some DNR training. We also have some post-academy training weeks, on-the-job field training, and then you arrive in your station the following December. We also have second-year advanced training, and all of this is conducted during a 2-year probationary period. So now I want to start getting into a little bit more on what that training looks like, just give you a few more details. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with what a law enforcement academy would look like, all law enforcement academies in the state of Wisconsin are essentially the same. They consist of 720 hours, and all that curriculum is sponsored by or orchestrated, required by our Department of Justice. So they mandate what we cover, and some of the topics you see here on the screen are covered: policing in America, legal context, all the tactical skills, your communication skills, patrol procedures, bias-based training, investigations, basic medical skills, and written and scenario testing. So all that is covered in our 720-hour academy. The neat thing about taking the law enforcement certifications through us as part of the position is that it's all paid, which is great. But also we put a little bit of a DNR flavor on it. So when the class is, working on vehicle contacts and how to make an appropriate vehicle contact, we set the scenario at a local state park, or something to that nature that makes it just pertain to the Department of Natural Resources a little bit better. For those um, for those people that come to us who took a law enforcement academy, whether it was at a tech school or with a different employer, they do not have to go through that entire academy again. That is why we start them a little bit later in April. They will attend about 4 weeks of refresher training, updates on our policies, making sure people have some of the unique trainings that we provide, like seated field sobriety, and also policy review, tactical skill refresher. And then once the 720 Academy is done, the abbreviated and the 720 Academy sync up for the DNR specific weeks. And those weeks really focus in on the topics that we regulate here at the Department of Natural Resources, focus on some of those things that you will need to know before you start your field training, like fish ID and, natural resources regulations on our state parks and forests. It'll cover all of that very DNR specific information. After we go through all of that very specific information, you then head out to do field training. Mike?
Yeah, so by the time the academy's over, you're really chomping at the bit to get in those field training assignments. And how we operate our field training is you're paired with an experienced warden or field training officer. You will be stationed through 4 locations that last 5 weeks. Those 4 locations oftentimes are chosen all throughout the state because we have such a diverse group of natural resources and people that we regulate. So to get a full understanding or breadth of what we do, it's important to go to the locations and speak to the seasonality of the resources that we regulate. And the way we accomplish that is, again, those 4 locations, 5 weeks apiece. So this is really the on-the-job training you have to work one-to-one with that field training officer and really that mentorship role. Your field training officer wants you to succeed. They're going to give you all the tools you possibly can to succeed because naturally you can't know everything. The warden service, we're tasked with knowing a lot of things. However, it's a slow coaching and progression of building up your skills to where by the 4th location, you'll have a really great handle on what you're doing and have that confidence instilled in you that you can succeed in whatever contact that you handle. So from the get-go, your progression or responsibilities will slowly grow as you progress through that field training assignments. But also you have that diversity and being able to hopscotch to different places for a 5-week period and enjoy. Really, you do get to enjoy the different places throughout the state and the different people that you encounter. Some of your most fond memories of field training officers certainly come to mind, and resonate with you and stick with you your entire life. So a really key component of the hiring process is certainly the field training assignments. And so, we speak to the evaluation component of it. They've reworked the evaluation of it to where it's not, getting too nitpicky. It's really that adult learning environment. Naturally, we all come to this career as adults. You're going to come to this career. You have to be 21 years of age. So if you can have a conversation with your field training officer and really look towards the evaluation, the mentoring, the growth that we all aspire to, it really is a growth or progression and, really playing to that adult learning environment. We want you to succeed. Your field training officer wants you to succeed, and they'll certainly give you the tools and the training to do so.
Yeah, Mike, that's really important. And thanks for bringing that up. I think if you talk to a warden who has been through our training process recently, That's sort of one of the themes that comes throughout, whether you're in the academy, at our specialized training weeks, or in field training. It's really this, adult learning model and ability for you to fail forward, give it a try in a safe environment where somebody is, has your back, not going to let you get hurt, but let you learn the way that you need to learn. So our academy is set up the exact same way, very adult learning oriented. It's not paramilitary oriented. And we put all this together to help you succeed. We're here to help you succeed, and that's what all this training is designed to do. I will also note, while we're talking about field training assignments, although they often are spread across the state, we do try to get at least one assignment near where you call home or near where you will eventually end up in your station, just to make that training really worthwhile to you. And then also, if we can get you near home, maybe you can stay at home and you don't have to be on the road for that entire year. So we try to help you out. We know it can be a stressful, long year, and we do our best to accommodate some of those needs as well.
Yeah, so station, your first station and post-academy training, certainly another milestone to look forward to. Your timeline for this would arrive within your station right around December. So we're not quite a calendar year if you come to us without the law enforcement credentials. And at that point, you can really get a grasp of and really kind of put roots down, whether you have to move or rent a house, buy a house, make accommodations for the family. You have over 11 months to do that. And so if you arrive in your station in December, to break out and do the things that you learned during field training and apply them to the field. Second to that is naturally we still have trainings coming. Certainly we have a 2-year probationary period, and you're constantly learning with this job, and we're not going to all stick it in the first year. It's nice to break it up in having specialized training weeks. As Major Kamke mentioned before, we have training weeks related to, if you've never operated a snowmobile, that could be incredibly intimidating. You lived in the South your whole life. Maybe you come to us from Florida. I've never, you may not have that experience. We'll have a specialized week where you can really learn from the basics all the way up to leaving that week feeling confident to operate a snowmobile, ATV, boat, regardless of what wrecked vehicle it is. We have specialized weeks to build your skills, assuming you all, you start at the very basics. So don't let that be a barrier for you if you don't have experience in one thing or another. Quite frankly, this adult learning environment is really geared towards building you up to allow you that confidence to work individually and master whatever task you're taking on. So that continued learning continues through to the first couple of years. Working with your new team, certainly warden teams, oftentimes there's 6 to 9 field wardens per team or per supervisor. So a chance to get to know your neighbors, work with your neighboring wardens. Likely, they'll have a feel for how your station operates, and working in that, truly team environment. You're not alone. If you want to ask for help, you will get help. So don't let that be a barrier to entry. And a lot of these secondary trainings, the recruit class or class that you got hired with will get to meet up again and go throughout the state, whether it's going to La Crosse to learn how to operate a boat, going to Green Bay for maybe some environmental or pollution cases. So it's a chance to meet your friends, your coworkers, engage, have conversation, but also continue that learning as you go on throughout your career.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So that's an overview of what you can expect over your first year of training. We covered a lot from the hiring process to the first year of training. So I want to save time for some questions. I know we also had some technical issues if you're watching this live, and I really want to get to those questions. Before we do that, I just want to say that currently, April 10th, 2023, our Conservation Warden hiring process opened and applications are due May 4th. Going forward, we hope to hire at about the same time every year, provided we don't adjust the hiring process in the future years. So look for us to hire at about the same time in future years. You can apply through Wisc.Jobs by searching Warden. Otherwise, that ends our presentation. We will use the next about 12 minutes to answer any questions that came into the live chat. If there are any questions that we don't get to today, or you have specific questions with specific circumstances, please reach out to us at dnrlerecruitment@wisconsin.gov. That's an inbox that we review and respond to people with recruitment-based questions on the daily. So please reach out to us and we'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Kara, thank you so much. Again, I know we did have some technical difficulties at the very beginning. So just to circle back and reintroduce Kara Kamke and Mike Burns, Conservation Wardens with the Wisconsin DNR. A lot of information thrown out over the last about 45, 50 minutes or so. And a few questions have popped up so far in the chat. One of them just coming in, how many wardens are hired per year? How big is a hiring class usually?
Hey, thanks, Dana. Yes, so that is a common question we get, and it really depends based on the year. So this year we expect to hire at least 10, but that number could go up depending on our vacancies and funding.
Got it. Now, if someone has to change stations, is there any financial support to provide a relocation?
So generally speaking, relocations, once somebody has already been stationed, are completely up to that individual or applicant. So after a new warden serves at least 2 years as a warden, they're essentially off probation. They are then allowed to put in for station relocations. We run them every year before we offer the incoming recruit class those stations. And if somebody were to choose to relocate, that generally speaking is on their own personal expenditures.
Wonderful. And of course, Wisconsin is a big and beautiful state, and there are a lot of stations. Do you know off the top of your head how many stations we do have?
Oh, that is a great question. Off the top of my head, I know I want to say it's over 100, but I don't have the exact number. Generally speaking, we have 1 to 3 wardens per county. And then depending on the areas, it might be even more than that. So in our very urban areas like Milwaukee, or in some of the areas where we have a lot of visitor use, like Sauk County, Devil's Lake State Park, we have 4+ wardens assigned to those areas.
Got it. Now, we kind of talked about this earlier, and I saw some questions brewing while we were fixing our technical difficulties. But folks were asking about how to set up a ride-along and how they could get involved in that process. Can you talk a little bit about the process to actually get on board for a ride-along?
Mike, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the options is you can look through our staff directory and find your local warden in your area, or you can reach out to the recruitment inbox, that email address that Kara had mentioned earlier in that last slide. Tell them where you're at, and likely we can connect you with a local field warden in that area that would be happy to take you for a ride along. Generally, our ride alongs are about 4 hours long, and generally we can gear them towards those weekend activities, because quite frankly, that's when the people are out, and you can kind of get a real feel to understand what we do and allow you to answer those questions right alongside the passenger seat of the truck or in the boat with the field warden themselves. So either looking at our staff directory to find your local warden, or reaching out to the recruit inbox mentioned at one of the last slides there.
Got it. Can you expand on that just a little bit, Mike and Kara, about reaching out to your local warden? Someone just asked if they were able to learn more through their local warden. Is that a good resource to tap into?
Yeah, absolutely. So the local conservation wardens throughout the state have some of the best knowledge about really what this job is like on a daily basis, what you can expect, and can hopefully help answer a lot of your questions. That being said, we've also had a lot of changes recently when it comes to our hiring and training. Really, what we aim to do every year is evaluate currently what we're doing and try to make it more efficient and more productive for both our staff and our applicants and future wardens. And so we do seem to have a few changes every year. And so if you've got specific questions about the hiring process or about the training regimen, you can also reach out to that DNR recruitment at Wisconsin.Gov. They'll get those questions to me and the training bureau, who may be able to be a little bit better suited at answering very specific questions about the training program or hiring program.
And speaking of training, let's pivot a little bit and talk about physical training. A few folks have asked about the physical requirement, about that 1.5 run. Is that on a flat track or with elevation? And then also asking, you know, as we get older, sometimes our bodies slow down. We can still be in great shape, but there is that slow down a little bit for some folks. Can you talk a little bit about that and still staying in physical shape and what the requirement is day to day?
Yeah, great question. So flat track, generally speaking, we generally host those events at a field house or an outdoor track, but sometimes we're just running parking lots too. So generally we're talking flat terrain there. And you should prepare for potential outdoor weather. So whether heat or a light drizzle, we've participated in all weather, just not thunderstorms. We generally bring them inside for that. When it comes to age and gender, we don't have any different standards in our fitness assessment based on age or gender. And once again, it's not a Department of Natural Resources assessment, but a Department of Justice assessment that covers all law enforcement officers in the state of Wisconsin. So unfortunately, regardless of age or gender, everybody needs to pass the exact same standards. And though I have seen people of all ages and genders pass the assessments. So we know it's possible. It just may take a little bit extra effort to get to that level to pass some of those assessments.
During the training portion, as you're training to become a conservation warden, are you paid during that part? Is that part of the job too?
Yes, absolutely. So all of your academy experience, all of the specialized training, all of the field training, all of that is paid time. And it's also paid expenses. So you're in what we consider travel status for all of it. And so you generally, if you need lodging, some of your meals, some of your mileage is reimbursed by us as well during that time. Mike, did you want to add something about the fitness assessments?
Yeah, I think it's important to note it is a pass fail. It's not based on a gradient, or you just have to pass the minimum standards. You don't have to annihilate them and run a 6-minute mile. It just, if you can run a 1.5 miles in 2020, you know, it's a pass fail. So as long as you can meet those standards that we're looking for, I believe, correct, and you're not graded, you know, or get any bonus points if you happen to just crush the standards.
Correct. Yep. As of this time, yeah, no need to go above and beyond. You just have to make those minimums.
That's definitely an important addition. I apologize, Mike, for cutting you off there. Circling back to the education requirements, can we touch base on those again? What are the requirements for education as a conservation warden?
Yes, so to apply, you need to have a high school diploma or GED at time of application. If you do not yet have 60 college credits, you need to obtain 60 college credits within your first 5 years of working as a law enforcement officer in the state of Wisconsin. If you already have college credits, those 60 college credits need to be, or I should say can be, in any area. So it doesn't matter if that 60 college credits is in natural resources or law enforcement or public speaking. I guess it doesn't matter what your 60 college credits are in, just that you have them. So once again, that's a Department of Justice standard that all law enforcement officers have 60 college credits within their first 5 years of employment. So if you can bring us 60 college credits, you don't have to worry about that while you're working for us. But if you don't yet have them, you do have a few years to earn those while employed with us.
Got it. Now, does any previous police academy experience count? Would an abbreviated academy count as experience there?
So, if you have attended a prior law enforcement academy in the state of Wisconsin, that counts towards your law enforcement certification as long as it is still current and active. So they do expire after a certain amount of time if you don't get employment as a law enforcement officer. So as long as you recently attended a law enforcement academy, your certification is still valid. That will count, and you can start in our abbreviated academy. If you attended a different style academy, like let's say a jail academy, that does not provide law enforcement certification. So you would need to attend our full 720-hour law enforcement academy. And then if you're coming from out of state, as long as you can, and you attended something similar to a law enforcement academy in a different state, the Wisconsin Department of Justice has a reciprocity exam, which basically means you have to take their test. And if you pass their test, that will count towards our certification as well. Did that answer your question?
Advanced degrees, somebody asking about having master's degrees or advanced education. Does that help on a pay scale at all, or moving through the academy quicker?
Unfortunately, no. Here at our division, no advanced degrees count or advance you any quicker than anybody else.
Wonderful. Well, we have just about a minute or two left. If we wouldn't mind ending on a high note, Kara and Mike. Kara, could you touch base very quickly on just your day-to-day as a warden, and perhaps what your favorite part is of the day-to-day?
Mike, I'll let you go first.
All right. So naturally, it's the variety of work. I think we're all after, having that constant engagement with something new. Certainly seasonally, as we're here in the springtime, turkey season's fast upon us. The spring melt is here. The walleyes are spawning. People are fishing. The variety of work that you deal with day to day, the engagement that you have with the public, and naturally, protecting people, protecting natural resources is something you can always get behind. You don't have to try to have a good day. It's going to come to you. So being able to, leave the driveway, turn the key, start your day, and go out and protect the people and natural resources of the state of Wisconsin, quite frankly, is incredibly satisfying to what I do, and absolutely love it every day.
Yeah, I don't know that I can say it better myself. I think that is really one of the things that attracted me to the job, is knowing that each and every day as a conservation warden, I'm making a difference. And obviously now in my current role, I don't quite get to do those same day-to-day interactions. And so really, currently in my role, I really find joy in recruiting and hiring and training the next generation of law enforcement officers here at the DNR, and knowing that really what we start you as is the training programs designed to transform and grow you into conservation wardens and leaders of tomorrow. And that is really fulfilling work.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much, Mike and Kara, for your time this evening. Remember, if you have any questions, you can send us an email at dnrlerecruitment@wisconsin.gov. Applications are open right now. They will close on May 4th for our class of 2024 Conservation Wardens. Thank you for your time this evening, everyone, on this Tuesday. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.